Hey, this is Mr. Mitchell with another social studies video. We're going to try something new on this video. I'm going to go ahead and give you the questions first. So hit pause, write down the questions, and then whenever you come up with the answers during the video, you can have the questions to write them down. Go ahead. Now here's the main part of the video. We're going to talk about the Mexican Revolution to modern Mexico. Now, we've talked a little bit about the Mexican Revolution already. It happened between 1910 and 1920. I don't have my correct writing utensil with me, so it'll take a little bit of time to write this. But between 1910 and 1920, and the Mexican Revolution wasn't your ordinary revolution where you have one group trying to take over the government. There were many different groups in Mexico that had armies that were willing to fight for their particular cause. Probably the most commonly known cause was to give regular people in Mexico land. And one of the people who was in charge of one of the armies was Emiliano Zapata, and that's him right here. Zapata's motto was land and liberty. So that's what his group was wanting to fight for. You can see he's got the military garb on, all these bullets around. There was a leader from the north named Pancho Villa. And that's him right here, has all the military garb around. These were fighting people around fighting towns, and they had lots and lots of skirmishes for the sake of trying to figure out what was best for Mexico. And each little group had their own agenda. All told, in the revolution, you had about 1 million Mexicans, over 1 million Mexicans, that ended up dying in the Mexican Revolution. Well, number writing is turning out to be a disaster here, but I'll try to get through this million here with these awkward-looking zeros. But anyway, more than 1 million Mexicans died between 1910 and 1920 in all these skirmishes. Fortunately for Mexico, in 1917 there was a new constitution, and by 1920 the new government made peace with all those armies. Now the next 20 years, from 1920 through 1940, the government broke up the haciendas. Now you may remember what the haciendas were. The haciendas were these big areas of land, thousands of acres that were basically stripped away from the common people in the 1800s. And one thing that you can imagine many Mexican people wanted was a chance to get the land back that their ancestors had been stripped of. So that's exactly what happened. The haciendas, these huge amounts of land, were broken up, and there were millions of acres that were given back to the common people of Mexico. Now, not everybody got their own land. Some people had some of the land went to ejidos. An ejido is a community-run farm. So all the villagers in the community had a say-so in the farm. They were able to plant things, and it all go to the good of the community. Now you'll find out later these ejidos needed to be tweaked, but we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Some people in the ejidos found that they couldn't get a bank loan because they didn't technically own their own land. So that was what the system needed to be tweaked for. And some people end up choosing not to take the land, to keep the ejidos. Well, anyway, there have been relative peace in relative peace in Mexico ever since 1920. There are 31 states in Mexico. You can see them all right here. They have a government very similar to the United States. They're democracy. They have free elections. There are 3 branches of government, just like in the United States. And just like here, the national government, the state government, and the local government share power. Like the land, much of the government-run industries have gone private. They have gone through what's called privatization. You know, you may remember that the United States is a capitalist economy. Now, that means that we have the people run almost all the businesses. The government doesn't really run that many businesses, and that's true in Mexico also, except for the oil industry. And you're going to see down here that this is the government-run country that runs the oil industry, Pemex. But anyway, that'll be something we'll talk about in a little bit. One thing I do want to talk about next is a maquiladora. Maquiladora is a big factory, a big plant, and it looks like this right down here. This is probably a maquiladora here, and you can see that there are just lots and lots of people, lots of people making stuff in this huge building right here. Most maquiladoras are near the United States. They're near the United States for trade purposes. So you'll find a lot of these maquiladoras right along the border. In fact, that's what this map is. Look at all these little dots which are close to the United States. There's really only a few that are not close to the United States. They are there for the purpose of trading with companies or people in the United States, selling their goods. And here's why that's an easy thing to do. It is because of NAFTA. NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement. The United States, Mexico, and Canada are in a North American Free Trade Agreement. So that means that people from Mexico can sell their goods to the United States without having taxes. Same thing with Canada. If a Canadian company wants to sell their goods to the United States, they don't have to pay taxes. That sounds a lot like the European Union. The European Union that we studied in Europe is the same exact way, except in NAFTA we do not have a common currency. Now, the European Union seems to not have a whole lot of criticism, but there is a lot of criticism of NAFTA. One of the criticisms of NAFTA is from people in the United States who point out that all of these places down here only exist because there is a lower minimum wage in Mexico than there is in the United States. Now, I'm going to throw out some numbers that I don't know what the real numbers are, but let's say the workers only get paid $4 an hour in Mexico, but get paid $5 an hour in the United States. Where would it be cheaper to run your company? It'd be cheaper in Mexico because you only have to pay the workers $4 an hour. So that's one of the complaints from United States people, is that it's taking jobs away from the United States because of the different minimum wage. One of the complaints of people from Mexico is that you have this huge country right up to the north here, which seems to have more influence on what Mexico does because they are frequent trading partners. So it just seems like there's a lot of people that are not too big on NAFTA. But even so, these maquiladoras do provide many hundreds of thousands of jobs. Okay, here's a cute little diagram of NAFTA. You can see somebody in the United States and Mexican and Canadian people all hugging each other, and because they're in trade together. All industry is privatized except the Mexican oil industry. Pemex, as you can see, is the Mexicans' largest, it's the oil industry company. Oil is Mexico's largest and most profitable export. They're the biggest. They send a lot even to the United States with the free trade agreement. Another thing that is found in Mexico is more silver than any country in the world. Now, it's not one of the top 2 exports, but that is something that is lucrative there in Mexico. The second largest business is tourism. Mexico has lots of cities that people go visit. Cancun, Acapulco, Cozumel. Mexico has warm weather, sunny beaches. You have ancient Aztec ruins, ancient Mayan ruins, lots of things to visit in Mexico. And I'll show some pictures here. Here's some ruins of either Mayan or Aztec. I think this is Chichen Itza, which would be Mayan. And let me talk about this town right here. This is Cancun. In 1970, Cancun had only about 100 people living there. And you can see, looking at the picture, that that is not the case right now. Cancun today has nearly 500,000 people living there, and every year 2.5 million people come to visit there. Far more people come to visit than actually live there. So as you can see, it has beaches surrounding it. It has probably has nice warm weather, and it has a lot of tourism there. Well, let's go back to the questions. You may go ahead and see those again and try to answer what you can. Hey, I hope you, pardon me, I hope you have learned a lot about Mexico.